Thank you for joining us at Toy Fair University. Next up, we have More Than Fun and Games, Play's Impact on Well-Being as We Age. Our speaker today is Ted Fischer of Ageless Innovation.
Thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. So just a couple seconds on why I'm here talking about this topic. So 10 years ago, I was at Hasbro leading a new innovation team, and my team and I launched Hasbro's first ever brand focused on older adults called Joy for All. And the idea was, pretty simple, that there was a void in the market of people focusing on the fun, joyful, playful side of aging, and that's what we set out to do. So what we've done since then, we launched a line of robotic companion pets focused on companionship and fun and joy and play. We found that not only is there this need for play, but there was unbelievable health benefits from play at all ages. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So I think one of the keys to what we've done is that simple, accessible technology and fun and joy and play is universal. It doesn't have an age limit, right? So I'm going to introduce you to somebody important. This is Claire. Claire was my grandmother. Claire, a few years ago, sadly passed away just shy of her 97th birthday. And during the last 5 or so years of her life, she really suffered from very severe dementia. And the one thing that it's really difficult in situations, you bring your children to see their grandmother, and she's got dementia, doesn't really remember. My grandmother had this unbelievable, uncanny way of always making you laugh. And so her defense during all of this was just to make it more joyful. And so she set you at ease, even though she may not have remembered what you asked her 5 minutes ago, she would just smile and laugh along. And that was the crazy grandson who would buy her all sorts of fun gifts. And this is her after shooting my son in the butt with a Nerf dart. And honestly, I learned so much from my grandmother. And as we were developing this brand, she became a very important focus group. Everything that we did, I'd sort of bring back and go visit her in the memory care community, and you'd very quickly get feedback, the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So I knew what we were doing right and doing wrong. So let me ask you a question. How many of you ever decided what age you want to stop playing? I never see a hand go up. You figured it out? Yeah. Never see a hand go up, right? We all, no one thinks, oh boy, at this age, I'm going to stop wanting to have fun. We actually work our whole lives and work as hard as we can to get to a place where we can have more fun, more play, more joy. And we get there and society kind of says, well, you're a little old for that. And so we've been trying to dispel that since we launched this brand. So the one thing, if you take away anything from what I'm going to talk about, is that play is not a nice to have. It is a basic human need at every age. And we've seen it now hundreds of thousands of times around the world. We're in 22 countries, and every developed nation has the same exact issue that we have. I'm going to show you a chart that really was the impetus for starting this brand. And if you need an economic reason for thinking about why we need to make sure that we're focusing on all ages when it comes to fun and joy and play, I think it'll bring it home. There's been dozens and dozens of research papers, hundreds maybe, on the impact of play. And what we've seen is that, this idea of interactive companionship is really important because they were, well before the pandemic, there's been an epidemic of loneliness and isolation that's been gripping this population. And AARP and some other Harvard, Stanford have done studies that'll tell you that loneliness is going to kill more older adults over 65 than heart attacks and cigarettes combined. And that's a pretty morbid stat, but the reality is that this epidemic of loneliness is impacting everyone, every socioeconomic stage, and it's something we've found that play can really impact in a positive way. And so not only does it reduce social isolation, but it brings people together. It helps make meaningful connections. The idea of games, bringing people together, whether it's digital or physical. The idea, with our companion pets, a lot of people are really isolated and living alone, and so they need something that interacts with them. And these are just, the research that's been done is unequivocal in how important this is. So what my team and I have decided and learned over this time is that it's a really unused weapon against the really important things that are impacting older adults these days. And so, This is like an industry term now, Kidult, and it's not my favorite term, I will be honest. Because to me, it's not kidult, it's adult, right? We're adults and we want to play. So why should there be a separate category for that? I think it's something that should move with us as we age, as we grow. And what we've seen is the intergenerational impact of play as you think about grandparents and maybe great-grandparents and their kids and they're raising kids. There's this common denominator. I used to use this example all the time. We go to my grandmother's memory care community. If you've ever visited one, it's not always the most uplifting place. You'd get in there and unfortunately there'd be people in wheelchairs sort of asleep, at a door. And it's a scary place for a little kid. And we would get through that and get to the apartment where my grandmother was, and we put Jenga on the table, and the world would get back to axis, right? Everything was sort of, okay, we're all around here doing the same thing, playing and having fun together. And so as we think about, what's important and the demographic piece that's happening today, this is the chart that I actually showed the CEO of Hasbro and convinced him that launching a brand for older adults was not a bad idea. So in 1950 to 2050, you can see the percentage of the population that was under 5 and over 65. And it was, under 5 topped out at just about 15%. Under 60, if you think about over 65 being only 5% of the population back then, that's kind of crazy. And then in 2020, those lines crossed. And by 2050, older adults will be a higher percentage of the population than 5-year-olds ever were. This is this is a global stat. Maybe a little outdated from 2013, but I think if anything, it's almost accelerated. So today in this country, 11,000 people turn 65 every single day until 2050. So there's 50 million Americans over 65 today. There's going to be 100 million by 2050. So if you need an economic reason to think about why focusing on this demographic might be important, I would argue that's a pretty good one. I talked about this a little earlier, but loneliness and isolation, we had no idea when we started this brand that we were going to discover this epidemic. And again, this was well before the pandemic, which really shone a spotlight on it. I mean, if anything good came out of the pandemic is that we all understood that, when they started to shut doors of nursing homes and not let families in and not let people talk to each other, and it was on the news every night, everybody's eyes popped wide open. Well, in that environment, bringing fun, joy, and play to people was unbelievably important. So I mentioned the cigarette stat, but the key is that loneliness and isolation leads to other chronic illnesses and diseases and problems. And so the further people get down this rabbit hole of loneliness and depression, other things start to happen. And that really is what starts to affect the long-term care of those folks. We've seen play change the game in so many situations. Again, back to the economic reasoning, thinking about, this population, loneliness and isolation costs, this is a 2017 stat, it was actually much higher last year, but $6.7 billion in additional Medicare funding, right? You don't come to a toy fair and think about you're going to talk about Medicare, but the reality is that the simple act of play and what we've seen in terms of bringing games that are reimagined for this population and for intergenerational play, bringing robotic pets and other things out there, and digital assets that are out there, helping older people connect. They're changing this demographic, and it's not taking a pill. It's not taking some type of medication that might have side effects. It's simple. It's what we all understand. It's why the people that are here really understand how important play is. So, one of my favorite quotes, George Bernard Shaw, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. And no one raised their hand here earlier, so I'm going to guess that we're not ready to stop playing yet. So when I think about, I come and I walk these aisles. I've been coming to Toy Fair for over a decade now, and I don't really see too many of the exhibitors, showing products that are, focusing on older adults, focusing on intergenerational, connectivity as much as we need to. So when I think about us as an industry, we need more, right? We need more. It can't be just a few companies that think this is a great novel idea. We got a population shift that's happening right in front of our eyes. And I think as a group, we need to start thinking about what are the needs of older adults as that population grows, and how do we keep fun and joy and play in their lives so that we're not only just extending, but also improving their quality of life. unequivocally the power of play is universal. And so our purpose is to reimagine how we positively live and age together by unleashing the power of play. And when we talk about that, and we're now, so believe it or not, our products are covered by Medicare and Medicaid because they've got 15 published validated research studies on the impact that we've had, where in a situation where somebody might have dementia or Alzheimer's, transitions become really difficult. Sundowning is a big problem. And those things are typically solved with psychotropic medications. Those have huge side effects, huge costs. And in many instances now, we've seen the impact of just giving them something simple, a toy, a doll, a companion pet. And we see the change in the demeanor in that transition versus now giving them medication. So if you start to think about all the small things that we as a group can be doing to support this population and think through what are the needs going to be over the next 20 years, next 30 years, as we start to think about 100 million people in this country over 65, I would argue that's the largest growing. Does anybody know what the fastest growing 5-year demographic is right now in our country? 80 to 85. As a percentage basis, it's the fastest growing demographic in this country. So, I've said it about 6 times, I think, but play is a fundamental human need. It's something that we all have to think about. Like, it's not a nice to have. This isn't like, hey, maybe we should think about this. We have to. We've seen the impact of play, and it has really moved the needle in a way we could never imagine. The emotional, the cognitive, the social well-being. Last few years, we've partnered with AARP on something that we call Reach Out and Play. And it was a national campaign to bring people together to physically play board games together around the country. It happened in faith-based organizations, community centers, kitchen tables. And we went around the country and we brought these people together, and then we sort of did a little survey beforehand, a little survey afterwards. And what we found was that every single person, even if they didn't participate in particular gameplay, benefited by the social connection. And that's an area where I think play has such incredible impact, is that social connection and bringing people together. No doubt that, the industry is now termed this kidulting, so really play is rising, obviously, but I think we need to have more solutions, more answers, more people in the game thinking about how we meet this need. And then, we think about toys, we think about games. How do we keep that intergenerational piece alive? Because what we've seen is that, we reimagined a Trivial Pursuit game. And what we heard from older adults was, there's no questions for me and I can't see the cards. So we made the cards bigger. That was easy solve. And then we said, all right, so how do we address this idea that they felt like all the questions were about pop culture? And so on our cards, there's a question for greatest, boomer, Gen X, millennial, and Gen Z on every card. So if the subject is fitness, the fitness question is, for the greatest generation, the answer might be Jack LaLanne. And for the millennials, it might be Zumba or Taibo. So, but everybody can play together and feel like the subject matter expert and participate together and enjoy and have fun. And I think that's a critical element to think about, that intergenerational piece, because I think it really is an important part of how we keep the well-being and the happiness of this generation going. One of the core premises of our design philosophy that I think has been, a key to sort of successful launches and successfully, 10 years later still being at this, we've involved older adults in every single design decision that we've made. We bring them into our, office. We go to them, whether they could be independently living, they could be living in senior living communities, they could be in memory care. We want to meet them where they are and then see how they want to interact and how they want to play. So when we redesign or think about reimagining a game for older adults, we do it with them. So the features you see on our companion pets, for instance, are things that they told us they loved about their pets. We're not just trying to guess what they want. So my message there is to say, if we're going to design for older adults, if we're going to keep them at the forefront of how we're thinking about fun and joy and play, we need to involve them in the process. We can't assume that we know what anybody wants. And there's no broad brush, because it's not age, it's stage. And I think that's a really important tenet as well. So I had made this 15 minutes because I thought I had 5 minutes of questions, but I was told that if we're going to take questions, we're going to do it over there. Is that what we're going to do? So thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I appreciate you listening.